Welcome everyone. Welcome to the London User Group Virtual Edition. Just going to make sure that everyone is joining in and that you can see my screen. If you can't see my screen, if you can't see me, use the chat. But we should have everyone joining in. We already have quite a few of you here. So thank you for taking the time. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. My name is David. I'm co-lead the London User Group, and I'll introduce you to the rest of the hosts very shortly. If you haven't, go and grab yourself a cup of tea or a drink. We'll be having great summer sessions. There's 10 talks of 10 minutes each with really, really good speakers. We are lucky to have the lineup that we have today. And I can see that we have some people from London, Lagos in Nigeria. Hello, Abby. Thank you for joining. Who else? Oh, Buckinghamshire. Hello, Steve. Good to see you here. I can see a few from of our friends from up north in the UK. Thank you. Oh, from Poland. Hi, Hannah. Of course you are, because you're going to be speaking shortly. And from Germany as well. Another person from Germany. Hi, from the US. Thank you for joining. Okay, let's get going, because we have a very tight schedule today, and we want to make sure that we give time for all our speakers, but also we want to make sure that we have time for you to network with each other. It's a good opportunity for you to speak to maybe someone from Chicago, with someone from Nigeria, or Germany with someone in APAC or India, as I saw Savio just popping in there. So with that, I'll get going. This is our second summer sessions. It's an idea that we had a couple of years ago of allowing smaller, shorter talks by some of the seasoned people who are out there in the Tableau community to come in and speak. This is the first one that we do virtually. Usually you would do a kind of an after sessions party where we would maybe be in a rooftop in London enjoying a cocktail in the summer, and I hope it's the weather is nice where you are. But because we can't have that, we have this virtual session, which is just the next good thing. These are your hosts. So as I said myself, you also have Sarah. Pablo Gomez is also a speaker. He'll be your last speaker of today. Laura also joins us to co-host the session, and Paul Chapman. However, Paul Chapman is not with us today. He's busy elsewhere, but he sends his regards, and I'm sure you'll be catching up on the recording afterwards. As I said, we have a really, really packed agenda. We have Addy, Sarah, James, Laxmi, Marianne, Hannah, Mark, Sedale, Heidi, and Pablo. Really, really good sessions. All of them are slightly different, and they are very good things kind of to learn from. With that, is going to be talking to us about maps. Will be our first session. But I'll talk about that in very shortly. So, couple of a little bit of kind of timekeeping and make sure that you know the rules. What will happen is we have 10 minutes for each session. I'll start the clock, so you speaker, you can see like the time that you have left. Once all the sessions, we'll have a break somewhere around the mid of the talks. After 5 talks, we'll have a 5-minute break, and then once all the talks are done, we'll move back to the room that you just entered, and there are 10 tables set up for speakers, and then there are a few other tables that are available to you as well. So on the speaker table, if you are there and the table is full but the speaker has yet to join, could one of you just step out so that the speaker can join? That will allow you to ask questions directly to our speakers. In terms of questions, what we'll do is we'll allow about 1 question if we have time in each one of the talks. The way to do that is to go into the Q&A session while the session is running, and just post your question there, and we'll make sure that we ask our speakers. We will also then, as I said, have the networking time. So all the speakers, once you finish, and when we finish the session, join your table, they are marked with your name so that you can join. You might have spotted a couple of other tables on the side. So if you are new to this Tableau thing, there is a really cool table right at the top left-hand corner that you can join Laura to learn more about Tableau. If you want to just chat about some other things, there are a few thematic tables that you can join, and make sure that you spend some time with us before we go. So to introduce our first speaker, let me just get my notes. So Adi, you will be talking to us about getting lost and navigating the analytics journey. So if you have a roadmap for success, or if your CEO cares about analytics, Adi will be encouraging you to think about data strategy and how it fits into the wider goals of business. She's just finalizing her data school program at the Information Lab, and she's been spending the last 2 years helping clients achieve their goals using Alteryx and Tableau. And a lot of the work that Adi has been doing the last 2-3 months has been around mapping, and I invite you to spend some time looking at her Twitter feed to see a lot of the work that she's done recently. It's breathtaking. And with that, Adi, I'll invite you to start sharing your screen and present your talk.
Here we go. All set?
You are set. I can't see your screen just yet, so if you want to try and I can see you, but I can't see your screen. And thank you for joining.
I actually can't hear you, David, so this is a little bit concerning.
Can you not hear me? Can you hear me okay?
I can't hear David. Can everybody hear me? If you drop it in the chat that I am on. We can hear you. Neil Richards says yes. Yes, okay, thank you. You can stop putting in the chat now. Brilliant, thanks a lot. I'm gonna get started then. Thanks, David, for that kind intro. Sarah, you can't see my screen, that's okay. I'll get to that in a second. I will start by saying I hope that you're all doing okay out there. And look, it's a tough time. We've made it to LondonTUG summer sessions and we've got a little friendly respite. I really think it's going to be a great afternoon. Again, I'm 80. Some of you may know me from being out and about speaking at user groups and going on the very occasional Twitter rampage about maps. So you may be surprised to know that I actually do a few other things with my time. I'm incredibly lucky to work every day with former Tableau Zen Master and genuine all-round superstar Emma White in the customer success team here at the Information Lab. Now, that role allows me to look at analytics journeys across many organizations at many stages of maturity. Just starting out, getting towards self-service, 2 licenses on board, 2,000. It's a really privileged position. And from that position, I've got some wisdom for you today. Fundamental elements that successful analytics journeys share. But I also want to push myself to do something other than bang on about maps all the time. So seriously, this is a new twist for me. And as Sarah suggested, you can't see my screen. I'm not using a shared screen today. No props, no Tableau workbook, no slides, no build on the fly to hide behind. It's just going to be me and you. Now, the good thing about growing data-driven organizations using Tableau is that I have a pretty cool reference guide for it already, and we all do. It's called the Tableau Blueprint. And if you're a tiny company, a large corporate, a startup, self-employed, a consultant, understanding the pathways with respect to data strategy, governance, user proficiency, growing the actual data community, there are actionable steps in the blueprint that you can access for free online. But if we were to take one step up from that and look down on Blueprint from above and think about analytics programs or data transformations, we're not actually looking at technology or tools or even data really. These endeavors are about people. And fundamentally, analytics programs don't fail. People do. So let me explain a little more, and I'll start with some evidential nuggets. An annual survey that was conducted across 65 Fortune 1000 or industry-leading firms told us that when attempting to become more data-driven, when trying to implement new analytics programs, 95% of the challenges that organizations face relate to culture and people. Just 5% of the issues encountered relate to technology. And because of the lack of attention to the people element of the transformation, less than 20% of over 1,000 companies surveyed by McKinsey had been able to implement an analytics culture at scale. Gartner analyst Nick Hudecker went a little bit further to suggest that actually about 85% of those endeavors fail in trying to effectively scale analytics. Now, different commentators will suggest anywhere between 5 and 10 major stumbling blocks along the road to analytics at scale. I'll share some links with you to read more if you'd like to, but I'm going to pick out 2 key things here. The number 1 stumbling block. First up, a failure to engage the business at the executive level. So look, your C-level professionals, your senior leaders, the bosses, may understand, in fact, they probably do understand that data and analytics can add huge value, but they might not understand how. That's not their domain. And these senior leaders, therefore, will also struggle to understand what to do with a data strategy, or even what business questions it is possible to answer using the data the business already has. And if there's no chief data or information officer in your organization pushing this, who is doing that? Who is in these conversations that take place behind closed doors with the bosses, talking about the key business goals for that year? Who's saying how those goals are going to be met using the data? Who's pushing a data strategy that aligns with the business goals? Connecting those things is absolutely critical. And there's got to be someone up there with some juice, someone who backs you, your team, your project, because you are going to need them. When you need budget for more Tableau creator licenses, for another full-time hire, when you need someone supporting you in guaranteeing protected time for your staff to upskill, even if that means deadlines get pushed, you need the person that's got that juice. And so we know the executive sponsorship is important, and that's in the Tableau Blueprint as well. But how do we actually get those people on board? Well, this is kind of the fun bit. Morgan Stanley Vice Chairman, Managing Director, and Senior Client Advisor Carla Harris says there are 2 crucial elements to growth in business. First off, professional currency, the professional currency you or your team carry. Do you have the results? Have you delivered? What do you have to show for your work that proves you are worth backing? How can you educate the person with the power? Help them connect the dots between the data, the insight, the business goal, and then the action. Now, the second element to this is the relationship currency, because you might be knocking it out of the park with the analysis, but if you're doing that in isolation, you're really not going to get far. So we got to think, what are the situations that arise where you can talk to or talk close to those people in the company that have the power? Can you get them at a water cooler? Is there a town hall, a social event? More difficult now, obviously. Can you get them on the train home? Kind of a little ambush. Oh my gosh, such a surprise to see you here, CEO. Can I sit down? And once you've pinned that person down, what kind of common ground could you establish a little relationship currency with? Is it kids, hobbies, whatever that might be, without crossing any boundaries you're not comfortable with? So what I'm saying here is the evidence suggests to us that doing good dashboards, then going home, is not really enough if you are trying to grow. And this idea of relationship currency also works when we think about getting analytics projects going at the routine business level. Proof of concept models, for example, will absolutely stay conceptual if they're vanity pursuits or works of intellectual curiosity. Successful projects work end to end because they are cross-function. They serve the business goal. They offer a quantifiable benefit to the business. And for that to happen really effectively, analysts have got to be able to talk to colleagues in other areas to understand why they're doing what they're doing. What specific question are we looking to answer? I say, hello, person in finance or HR or customer experience who has that deep business expertise. Let's have a virtual donut so I can understand how this works from your perspective. And when you think about a particular goal, what is that being driven by? Can we reflect on how things looked in the last 12 months? What is it that we're looking to change? Now, I know I've made dashboards that people just didn't engage with. I've got the Tableau server views. I know they weren't clicking. And as a consultant, maybe I make my peace with that and say, hey, it's okay, the business isn't ready for me, or this isn't my problem to fix. And maybe there are issues that are bigger than me. But that's kind of thinking about it in the wrong way. because this is actually an analytics endeavor that is failing in front of my eyes. No views mean no engagement, nothing gained, no insight, and crucially, no data-informed action. And now I also know that things change for me when I reach out to people. Emailed, instant messaged, just track them down in person, even virtually. Like, you cannot avoid me forever. And look, if you're heading a team and you back your incredible analysts, but you also know that some of them struggle with making contact or having unplanned conversations, get a translator on board, a dedicated role, an advocate, an intermediary who understands both the analytics and how to share that in plain English with someone else in the business so they can see why they should care. And so I want to finish with the key point really that I started out with, that growing the analytics community, deploying your software, enabling organizational growth. The overarching theme isn't technical, it's interpersonal. The building block to growth is developing strong relationships. So let's all do our best to keep people at the heart of that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Addy. I'm not sure if you can hear me. You probably can't. But thank you very much. And I think you hit the nail on the head, right? I think the way that you closed it is great because Adi was just saying that the key to success is relationships. So make sure that you make the most of today and create those relationships with the rest of the community at the end when we'll have some time in terms of networking once we finish all the talks. Just to take a quick look. I don't think we have questions for Adi just yet, but remember, you can join her once we go back to the table, so you can join in at the table. Thank you very much, Adi. Actually, we might. Can you hear me?
I can now, yeah.
Perfect. That's great. Actually, I have one question. What is your advice for when there isn't just that executive sponsorship at your organization? Asking for a friend. This comes from
Asking for a friend. I mean, a big one. I guess two ways of approaching it, and it's tricky to think of this off the hoof because it's a big question, and I guess we can talk more in the tables. But one thing, if you don't have executive sponsorship, get one. Like, who can you pin down to say this is the reason why this is important? If they don't seem like the natural choice, you just ask anyway. Like, the whole thing for me is this kind of a job of sales, right? And that's not sort of cutthroat, you must buy this or this, but you have to help people to understand why they should listen to you when they have all these other priorities. So if you can make that happen with someone at the executive level, then great. If you're really running into brick walls on that, I would potentially make myself the champion and put myself in as many conversations with as many people as possible. And yeah, maybe this is looking at it in a way that's not really realistic, a bit too optimistic, but if you put yourself in enough conversations, someone is going to reach down for you and say, hey, look, over in this part of the business, this is happening. Eddie's going to talk to you about that, or Neil's going to talk to you about this.
Okay.
Look at this thing that is going to make a big difference, and that work will get elevated.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. And we do appreciate the optimism. I think we all need a little bit of that this year. So with that, thank you very much. Again, don't forget, you can ask more questions to Adi. Finish with the sessions.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sarah is just coming on. Sarah will be talking about transforming the National Trust's data and reporting landscape, focusing on highlights from their current journey on moving around 4,000 users from an Oracle Business Intelligence to Tableau. Sarah, welcome. Thank you for joining.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm really pleased to be here. A bit daunted actually by the amount of people and Addy's great talk there. That was really good. Hard act to follow. I'm going to see if I can actually share my screen. That's the first challenge. Okay. Hopefully, let me know when it's coming through.
Yeah, it's coming through, and I'll stop and I'll give you time to get on with your talk. Thank you very much, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Yeah, so my name's Sarah Turner. I'm the head of business intelligence at the National Trust. As David says, over the last couple of years, we've been on quite a journey in terms of transforming our data and reporting landscape, moving from OBIE, Oracle, through to a bigger deployment of Tableau. So today I'm going to whiz through some highlights, and there probably will be quite a quick whiz through. But before I do that, just a little bit about the National Trust, in case you've not heard about it or you don't know what it is. It was founded in 1895, so this is our 125th anniversary this year. So it was going to be quite different pre-coronavirus, as for everybody really. We're the largest conservation charity in Europe. We look after over 500 special places across England, Wales and Northern Ireland. We have nearly 6 million members who help us really to fund our conservation work, and kind of backing up all of our staff. We have 65,000 volunteers, without which we really couldn't run. I'm not going to talk through all of these numbers, but you might know us for our tea rooms, and we certainly do sell quite a lot of cream teas. So on our dashboard of sales, we certainly see that hot drinks are our highest seller alongside the scones. So over 2 million of those a year we sell in our cafes. We're 350 cafes. But that aside, we're really passionate about conservation. That is our main reason for being. And this year we've committed to do our bit for climate change. So we are committing to be carbon neutral by 2020, and also to plant 2 million trees over the next 10 years. So you can probably guess from this, we have quite a really interesting set of data. And it varies all the way from commercial, financial, traditional sort of stuff that you need to run a business. We have holiday cottages, we have hotels, we even have pubs, all the way through to kind of customer kind of insight type of information, marketing, and also, of course, conservation data. So really varied and really interesting in terms of the things that we have to work with as data professionals. But back in 2018, frustrations were really high with lack of access to data that was easy to use and interpret, a lack of confidence in the numbers too. We had lots of organisational listening sessions, and it was called management information in the trust. In terms of the reporting, was kind of consistently kind of held up as one of those things that was really not as good as it could be. And around the edges, because of that, we had lots of manually entrenched processes. We had analysts creating an Excel factory, going and getting whatever data they could, mashing it together themselves so that they could do the work that they needed to do and move forward. So I mentioned we have a data warehouse. We actually had 2 at the time. That is Redshift on AWS, and we had the Oracle OBIE as a front end. We also had a small Tableau instance, which we use primarily for our customer and marketing kind of insights. That had grown quite organically over time though. So that was the background and the kind of problems that we were facing a couple of years ago. So we set off on a program of work, and there were a number of things. I won't go into them all now, but there was a number of things coming together in the organisation that made it the kind of right time to do that, and a number of minds and a number of the right people needing and wanting to do something about it. So we set off on a program where we were trying to and wanted to give more and better access to data to the right people in the right way, and also give more support for the whole organisation. So not just people who are really working intensely with the data as analysts, but also consumers. So help people to use the data that we had. And then at the same time, we wanted to decommission some of our legacy tools to to simplify the environment. We took a kind of starting small approach with a proof of concept, where we started probably with about 30, let's call them end users, people who might just go to a report and interact with it on a regular basis, and also 10 analysts, so people who'd be more like a Tableau creator. And what we did with them was we ran a number of design-led thinking workshops where we'd work through a really interactive session, probably half a day to all day, where we would kind of go back with the post-it notes and work out what were the biggest problems that they had today, what were the real pain points they had in terms of making decisions and then getting the data that they needed. And we mapped all of those out. And then with them, what we did was prioritize them and said, okay, of all of these things, and we had big balls of many post-its, which are the things are going to make the most difference? And those are the ones that we focused on for this proof of concept. So we were kind of constraining the scope of what we were doing, and then also making sure that we were working on things that were highest value. That proof of concept was the thing that we then took to our executive board, and we took the results. It was really positive. We took the results, the different use cases, and we also had a lot of business buy-in because we worked really iteratively with them and included them in the process. So we had testimonials that we could share with the exec, and at that point we had buy-in to then go and do something much bigger, which included upgrading our Tableau servers, bringing in an Alteryx server as well, and it has led us in the end to kind of around about 4,000 users and just under 70 Tableau creators. So as Adi said earlier, a lot about the process was really about people and engaging the people. So some of the key ingredients: people at the centre and being really transparent. So bringing people along the journey with this iterative approach, and also being okay with showing something that was not quite perfect. So sharing it with maybe an analyst or an end user of, okay, is this kind of what you want? And then working with them to build it out, rather than spending ages kind of building something that was going to be perfect and then potentially not needed or not wanted. We also built out a centre of excellence for our analysts. That's where we built out training and standards, guidelines, templates, and kind of core data sets for them to use that were kite marks. So that was our word for certification. And then we also had this differentiation, which kind of came out over time, was the difference between what's ongoing, always required enterprise reporting versus kind of exploratory analysis, which might be a one-off. You might pull together some data for a particular need, it's used, and then you don't need it anymore. Or it might be that actually that's really useful and it could be utilized by many people across the organization. At that point, we're going to maybe look at it, make it more scalable. We might improve the user experience, the layout of it. We might make the way that the data is brought into Tableau, for instance, a bit more robust. And then the fourth thing on here, structure, was in one way was about the program and the projects and how we were running them, but also about the Tableau site. So we had one Tableau site only, and we chose that because we knew that we had lots of data that was used across all of the organizations. So we needed to show that it together in many instances. The structure we split into this kind of exploratory analysis and the enterprise reporting. So we were separating out things that were to be used for everybody, the really cool things, from things that maybe are more one-offs and more in-department use. We also introduced AD groups in terms of security so that we could manage that really well. Underpinning all of that, we had a foundational data strategy that was kind of running in background, looking at our operating process and our operating model. So, luckily to say, we were really quite successful in bringing on board our 4,000 users, which we finished probably just around Christmas time. This just gone this year, and we have seen a lot of benefits through those different use cases. We identified over £1 million saving a year across the whole organisation. That's really just the tip of the iceberg, and we feel like that will grow over time. Lots of different examples that we weren't maybe aware of at the time, or that will come out over the woodwork. So improved decision making. So we managed to actually, in the process, improve the quality of the data to the extent that our service desk incidents that are reported reduced by 91%. So that's a huge change. And actually, in terms of organisation-wide, we don't hear complaints about the reporting that we have anymore. And then the last, but maybe the most important thing, is that speed of response, especially during coronavirus. Having the tools and processes in place has been invaluable. We've been able to stand up new reporting to make decision-making really quick as we've been trying to pivot and respond to the changing environment over the last couple of months or so. You can see the kind of comments on the right. We have rafts of positive feedback. It's been quite hard to get maybe constructive feedback about what we could do differently. And overall, one of the key things is people who were scared previously of interacting with the very tabular kind of reporting we had are now quite happy to go ahead and into Tableau, interact with the dashboards themselves. They kind of almost enjoy it. So that is great. In terms of reflections, I'll just go to the kind of with hindsight. Be brave, be really brave with that. What is the minimum thing that you need to create? And what is the key question that you need to answer? We could have pushed on that a little bit more, I think, and got somewhere quicker. Monitoring and maintenance, that content grows like wildlife when you've got 50 analysts. So having enough resource to be kind of monitoring that and keeping control of that is essential. And we could have started to productionize our reporting a little bit sooner than we did. So kind of lastly, where are we now? We've got our foundations, and next really what we're going to be doing is concentrating on streamlining those areas of content, and building out more really short focused kind of use cases in terms of the business questions and decisions that we will need to answer to make the most of it. So thank you. I'm sorry, I think I've gone slightly over, but I'm going to stop now and hand back over to David.
Thank you very much, Sarah. So I think it was just a little bit over, but it was very interesting, and I think there's a theme there, both from you and Abby, that Addy, that there is a key aspect, which is people and relationships. Both of those are key for the success of analytics. So while analytics is incredibly important, there's very little that we can do if we don't bring people with us. So with that, we'll move straight on to the next sessions. Sarah, thank you very much. Again, you can ask Sarah any questions when we're back on the tables. For now, we'll bring in James. How are you doing, James?
Hi, David.
James. Hey, how are you doing? Thank you for joining.
Hopefully you can see my screen and myself.
Hey, yes, I can see both of those. So thank you for joining. We really appreciate having you here. James, today we'll be talking about developing an internal Tableau data community. It's going to be a whistle-stop tour. That's what 10 minutes allows us, right? On some of the initiatives that the Surrey County Council has implemented to keep their Tableau users and the wider data community engaged and enthusiastic. We have a lot of enthusiastic people within the chat, and we are all looking forward to hearing from you. With that, take it away.
Fantastic. Thank you, David. I'll start by saying my cat has chosen during Sarah's presentation to fall asleep on my lap. So I'm going to try and deliver this without waking her up. So anyway, thank you very much for having me. As David said, my name is James Goodall. I'm the Analytics Support Specialist, and I work in IT in a Data Analytics Centre of Excellence at Surrey County Council. But just to give kind of a very brief summary about Surrey County Council, and obviously we're a local authority. And that means we have quite a wide range of different teams and services that operate within the organisation. We have things like children's and adult social care, highways, all of the usual things like procurement and HR, business operations, that kind of thing. And all of these people are engaging with Tableau in slightly different ways. And so kind of what we needed to do was find a way of bringing them all together and enabling that kind of sharing of knowledge. And so that's kind of going to be the point of my presentation today. It's just quickly going through one or two initiatives that we've run in Surrey to try and achieve this. So I should start off by kind of talking about why a data community is important. Now, obviously, a lot of people here, you're all here, you've probably kind of got a rough idea of why a data community is important. You're engaging with one at the moment. But just kind of thinking about it from an organizational point of view, it's looking at breaking down those organizational barriers, trying to prevent the silo working that can quite often happen when you don't have a community in place. And the kind of thing where people are doing very similar jobs in different teams within an organization, but they don't know that each other exists. They don't know that one person's managed to achieve this one thing and then go and put resource into doing exactly the same thing and maybe buy more training or something like that. So it's about kind of enabling an organization to fully exploit all of the skills that all of the analysts have throughout the organization and trying to avoid some unnecessary duplication. But it can also be quite a good vessel to try and push forward best practice as well as kind of your organizational data strategy. So with that in mind, I'm going to talk about the first initiative that I'm going to talk about is Tableau Bite-Sized. So apologies if anyone read the blog that I put out a couple of weeks ago. This might be a little bit familiar, but basically this is an initiative that we aimed at existing Tableau desktop users, so new and existing Tableau desktop users. The idea behind it was that we wanted to create a quick, semi-relatable challenge for them to impart some knowledge or some training within Tableau. The theory is we publish up a dashboard on a Monday morning. We then publish it to our internal Jive forum and kind of open up the challenge to say, try and recreate this. Let's see what you've got. So this might be a new piece of functionality. This might be a particular chart type or something like that. And then on that forum, we disable the download on Tableau Public for the time being. And then we invite people to kind of comment and talk to each other and work out how to do it. And then we post up a how-to guide at the end of that week. So we kind of slowly build up this repository of how-to solutions so that anyone new or existing can just jump in and out whenever they want to, whenever they have 20 minutes is kind of the time that we aim for, trying to get it done in 20 minutes or less, just whenever they have some free time. It doesn't take them too much away from their own job. We found it's a really good way of introducing new functionality after we upgrade. So things like, set actions after 2018 free, parameter actions in 2019, make lines, biz animations and relationships and things like that are going to be in the next remit. So it's kind of a way of just quickly getting that out without having to get people in one-to-one, either physical or at the moment virtual sessions, or having to buy in training or anything like that. And it's a slightly different and engaging way of doing that training in a way that's relatable to the people doing the job. So it's we tend to have the data focused around Surrey or around something to do with a local authority or something within the purview of public sector. So that's Tableau Bite-Sized. You can see one or two examples that we've got there that have built up a repository for. But the second one that I want to talk to you about is what we've termed as Did You Know? So whereas Bite-Size was aimed at our desktop users to try and help them develop their skills, the Did You Know initiative is kind of a way of engaging with all the employees within an organization, where we produce kind of eye-catching visualizations. Now that could be in terms of the actual design, or it could be in terms of the content, so a particular subject that people are becoming interested in at that time. Usually with a focus towards Surrey. So it could be like road traffic accidents within Surrey, well-being within Surrey, domestic migration in and out of Surrey. And it's intended as a way to draw your everyday employee into engaging with analytics without necessarily knowing that they are, but as a way of also educating our desktop user community around some of the possibilities. So trying to move away, trying to show them that while their day-to-day is kind of involved in these kind of performance, your standard performance dashboard, maybe there's some other ways to try and visualize your data, to try and be creative with it. And at the same time, it's about cheerleading for Tableau. Obviously, we've got the remit to push out that self-service analytics agenda, and Tableau is going to be at the forefront of that. So, so it's kind of letting people realize this is the kind of stuff that Tableau can do for your data, and you can make it look more interesting and more engaging. And so there's a couple of examples just on the screen about that kind of thing that we're doing now. To say, I'm not going to pretend that it's kind of data art or anything like that, but it's kind of a slightly different view of a visualization that's beyond the normal bar charts or line charts that someone might be familiar with. So that's kind of, we've covered the desktop users, the new and existing desktop users when they can jump in and out, and our wider data community. But there's another initiative that we were trying to focus as a kind of training for our desktop users. Takes a little bit more time, and that's Biz Games. So hopefully a few of you might be familiar with the concept of Biz Games. Hopefully a few of you might have taken part in some Biz Games in the past. And it can take on a lot of different forms. You're probably aware of Iron Biz that's happening at the moment. That's quite an intense version of it, or it can be quite an intense version to someone who might be at the early stages of their Tableau journey. But it doesn't have to look like that. It can, it can be, you could get a few people into a room and kind of have a little chat around it. And that's kind of the approach that we took. We put out the feelers in the organisation for a data set that someone needed visualising. We then put out the call and get analysts from all different teams all over the organisation. So as I say, people from like adult social care backgrounds or procurement backgrounds and things like that, and get them in a room. So no one's kind of overly familiar with the data set. We're not saying adults, let's bring your data set in, or procurement, we're going to visualise a procurement data set. We try and find something that people aren't going to be overly familiar with. And we kind of sit them down in a room, introduce the concept, and give them 90 minutes and just basically say, get on with it, give us something. And that something kind of needs to be like, we want them to tell us a story or discover a piece of analysis within that data set. And we settled on 90 minutes because we did a couple of trial runs within the Centre of Excellence, one of which was an hour long, and we sweated during that. It was not fun. So we kind of thought, yeah, let's trial it with a couple of other time periods. Got to 90 minutes, and kind of 90 minutes felt about right. Kind of gave enough time to produce something meaningful. But so kind of after those 90 minutes are up, what we do is that we get all of those people that took part to publish their content up to a project on Tableau server. We then have that project open on a big screen projector, something like that, and we go through it. So each one by one, the people who publish stand up and present what they've produced during the session, and kind of how to interact and what their story is telling, basically. During that time, each of the other people are scoring the presenter out of 10, scoring their visualization out of 10 in 3 different categories. So that's analysis, storytelling, and design. And so once all of those scores are in, they're taken away and collated. While the collation is going on, we then take part in a group viz critique session. So where each person, so someone's had their chance to present their viz, and then this is the opportunity for people to feed back, tell them what they liked about the visualization, what they didn't like, what they would have done differently, that kind of thing. Then when that's all over, kind of hopefully imbuing a bit more kind of knowledge from throughout the organization in terms of best practice of visualizations, we take the top 3 scoring ones from that group and put them forward to our Surrey public sector Tableau user group. We try and aim it to have the Biz Games probably about a week, maybe 2 weeks before the user group session, so that then we can put something through for the people to vote on. Then the 3 winners kind of go away with different sets of prizes, just some swag, like some t-shirts, coffee cups, that kind of stuff. And then we also produce this trophy, which the winner holds on to until the next Biz Games session, and then hands it over to the next person, and so on and so forth. That's kind of very whistle-stop tour through 3 of the initiatives that we've run. I hope kind of throughout that you've seen why we've done that and some of the benefits that we might be realising from that. So going back to what I talked about at the start, kind of trying to cut down those directorate boundaries, trying to avoid silo working wherever possible, and let people interact with each other and share that knowledge that might normally be just kind of, as I say, pocketed in those little silos. I think an important one is getting people to work quickly. and work quickly with data sets they're not necessarily familiar with, really taking them out of their comfort zone. Like, people tend to fall into traps when they're using the same data set or the same kind of content day in, day out of it kind of becoming a pattern, whereas this kind of challenges them to think about it differently, think about different techniques and how to use Tableau differently, and learn about some of the capabilities of Tableau. And as well as that, specifically with BizGames, leading to an end product you can give to a customer. As I say, if we ask for a data set to visualize, we can then give that. That's the combination of all of these different data analysts that we got in the organization. Obviously, it's quite cheap to run all of these things, just requires a little bit of setup and planning in terms of how to do them all, and it's fun. And I think that's just over 10 minutes. Sorry, David. So I just want to say thank you for having me. If there's any questions, I'll take them, but if not, I'll be on the table, and you can always reach out to me via my website, Twitter, email, anything like that.
Okay, so there's a few questions. I'll ask you two very quickly. One short one: did your cat wake up, or is it still asleep?
No, she's still asleep. We've done well.
Okay, great job. So the other question is, where do internal communities do not work? So we've heard from like stories of success and what works, but what activities have you attempted which have failed? I know you briefly touched on the fact that BizGames run for an hour and they felt too short, and you moved up to 90 minutes. That feels right. But are there any other points that you feel like this just doesn't work?
I mean, yeah, it's a bit up and down, as kind of I'm sure you're aware, David. Kind of developing a community takes a bit of plugging at it. Like, kind of sometimes we'll go down a route and it might not necessarily work. In the early days, I think our very first BizGames got quite a bit of traction, just because I was just hammering the communications out. But then the second one, we kind of struggled to get some people in. And I think it's kind of trying to convince kind of get that executive buy-in. Oh, my cat's woken up now. Trying to get that executive buy-in that this is a legitimate way of doing business, of learning. It's not, I know it's got games in the title, but it's a bit of fun. And so it's kind of trying to convince people that investment in the time, and trying to convince managers that investment in the time is worth it. I think that's where we might have struggled a little bit in the past.
Okay, perfect. As I keep repeating this to make sure that no one forgets, and anyone new that joined. If you want to carry on this conversation with James or any other of our speakers, once we're finished, jump onto the tables, and we should have about 20 minutes or so for you to spend some time with them. Thank you, James. We really appreciate you being here. Great to see you.
Very much.
And Lakshmi, you're up. So as we wait for Lakshmi, a little bit about while you hear from him, it's the best way of managing Tableau created licenses. So we'll be talking about the recent implementation of Tableau and a new way of applying the license manage, or the LABM license management, and tips and tricks that Lakshmi has seen within his organization. I can see you. How are you doing? Thank you for joining us. Good evening.
Good evening. So you can hear me good?
Yeah, that's perfect. If you want to share your screen, we'll get going.
Okay. Hope you can see.
I can see your screen. That's perfect. I'll take it away.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks, David. I'll take it over from here. And thanks, James. So we all know how the communities help build the relationships, right? And also, so along with the external TUGs like this, so building internal communities also help the guys who just start with the product, or so whatever it is, right? So we know if a fresher is starting with some product and he has someone to guide him or give him a hand when he needs, so that helps him so much, rather he's spending a lot of time on the tool. So with that, I'll start with my session. Let me make it first. Yeah. So login-based license management. So Tableau has from 2020.1 onwards, it's introduced LBLM method, which is a different way to manage your creator licenses. So when I joined my current organization, so one of the questions that I've received from my management is like, okay, we have 100 creator licenses, and how many licenses are being actively used, and who are the people who haven't used since last 3 months, last 6 months, or who are the people, let's say they have taken the key but they haven't activated the product. There are people who does that as well, right? So these are the questions that I got from them as soon as I joined. We can enable the desktop reporting, I know that, but all of a sudden when you have 100 licenses distributed across different people and different functions, so it's hard to get that information, right, when you don't have the reporting is enabled already. So that's where I started up digging how better we can do this, how better when you have an organization who are using 300, 400, 500 creator licenses, how better you can build a reporting, and as well as how better you can manage the licenses so you can efficiently use them. So that's the challenge that we have started to deal with, right? So first is like you have different licenses and you will distribute those to different people. So at the end, you have a portal where you can see which license has been given to whom, but it's difficult to track back. Let's say I've given the license to user A and he has given that offline to user B, you'll never know. So that's one of the challenge. And how do you do the monitoring, whether a person is using it actively or haven't used, as I said. And last, how do you reclaim a license if a person doesn't want the license, or if a person's manager says, okay, David doesn't need a license, so just take it back. I can say to David that we'll take your license back, but I cannot guarantee that he's not using or he's not continually using the product. I cannot guarantee that point with the way that we are doing the licensing management so far. But with the LBLM came in, started from 2020.1, so we don't need a key. So unlike the earlier way where we have to distribute the product key, so you don't need a key in order to distribute it to each and every user, which we were using before. It's just a sign in that, which I'm going to show you guys how the activation happens. And also there is another administrative view that can help us. So how many keys that were activated, where have been those are being used, and whether it's been in active use or not. So these are all built by default. You don't need to enable any reporting or any other commands. You don't need to do anything on the client side, which is desktop side, which is a tedious task to do. Also reclaiming, it's more easy now because you don't need to tell user that I'm taking your license back and you stop using it. We know not to do. We just tell them that we are taking your license back. That's it. So all you can surely say that if a creator license has been taken back from one person, you can make sure that he doesn't use it going forward, right? So how do you start to switching from an older way of licensing to the way that we are doing? So how do we make this switch, right? So it has to be done on a Tableau server because Tableau server plays a key role on this method. So that server needs to be connected to internet all the time. And the other ways, or the other thing is, so the creator key that you have, let's say as of today, if I have 10 creator licenses I have bought from Tableau, so I'll get 11 keys, right? So 10 individual keys which I need to distribute to different users for the desktops and prep builders, and one key for server. But now we'll have a one key, only one key, that with an LBLM enabled option. So I just need to activate that on the server and run few simple commands. So that will activate, just like I've shown in the slides. So these are simple commands. If I go in deep, just activate them on the server so that your environment is ready for the setup. And there are some versions which Tableau says you have to be on these versions so that you can use. So these are the versions. If it is on the server, you need to have 2020.1. If it is a desktop that you want to go for this kind of method to activate, it has to be 2020.1 plus, and builder is 1.3 plus. So if I show you that in action, yeah, so this is the desktop that I've just installed, and I'm at the activation screen. Hope you guys can see my screen, right? Because I switched the windows. Say yes if you can see. Okay, thanks. Yeah. So if you look at the activation window, earlier we used to have only activate with product key, where you used to activate the product key and blah, blah, blah. But now you can simply activate it by signing into a server. Okay. So here I've given my local host because it's installed locally, but it will be your enterprise Tableau server, right? So I'll just log in. So the easiest way is like you don't need to share the key, or that key cannot be shared with anybody else. If I want one person to use this product, I can say sign in with SSO, or I can fill in the form here. I mean, just give the username and password. So I'll say use my Windows credentials. Just go to one side where you have the creator license, right? That's it. There you go. So your product has been activated. So what if I want to just take back the license from the person who is using it? What I'll do, I'll just quickly go to my server, so which has an administrator has to do. He can simply change his role. So right now I have a creator server administrator. Whoever have these creator, site admin, creator, and creator server admin, they can activate without any issues. So I'll simply change the user license back to Explorer or a viewer, or if he doesn't need a server access at all, I'll make them unlicensed and remove later on. So that will make them, that make sure that the license has been taken back, and we don't need to worry if he's still using it or how that's happening, right? So it's more easy way to do. If I go to the pre-built dashboards, so I can see an additional dashboard in here, login based license usage. So which will give me view like who has installed using creator key and who has what product they have installed, or which version they have installed, when they have used it last. It's taking a while, sorry for that. Let me show you on the presentation that I already had. Yeah. So if you look at it, so it will, I have just masked the names and stuff. So if you look at it, I can see when they have activated and when they have last used, each and every details that I can capture from that report without any additional reporting, right? Without having any additional reporting on. Also, let's say if I have taken back one of the creator's seat, so it will show me what was their role and what is their current role. So even that reporting also I have. Yeah, so saying that, it has all of the issues that I have with my older kind of way of managing licenses. It made it so easy that I can do, I don't have an issue of key distributions. I don't need to take care of different keys, different people. So where is it going? Is it offline or online? I don't need to take care of anything else. It's just that you just have to enable this on your Tableau server, and then it just works like that. But the migration part, if you have large number of users, wherein the migration parts, it's a bit like coordinations with different functions, which we have done in our organization, like dealing with more than 350 creator licenses that we have while we were doing this migration. So talking to different functions that are available in the organization, telling them that this is what we are doing. If you're using an old key, just switch it with the document of procedures that we are giving you. But even though that process is hectic, but once we are done with that complete process, it's much more easy. Let's say if my license is going to be renewed in some time, right? If my license is going to be renewed in maybe a month or 2 months, with the older licensing method that I have to distribute individual key to each and every one. Or if I have to take back, if I have to stop somebody, it's very difficult. But with the way that I have now, I'll just reactivate the key on the server, so that it's so easy, right? So it helped us. I hope the session helped you guys as well. So with that, I'll take the questions.
Thank you very much. Great talk. And I for one, I really like LBLM. I think it's a really, LBLM, for those that don't know, it's what Tableau calls this new licensing model. So if you're trying to move in that direction, you can always ask Tableau about that. I have a question for you. So Tableau, this is the question from Andrew Anuj. Tableau allows licenses to be on 2 machines. How does that work with this licensing model?
So LBLM, we did not test on 2 machines so far. So because all of our guys are VDIs, so mostly they're used on a single machine. So with the way that we are working, I don't see that problem. But let's say if you have, it's already installed on one machine and yes, you want to move it back to other machine. So you have a command that you could quickly run on machine 1, which I can show you, that you can run on whoever is having desktop. So you have to run this command. So it will remove the licensing information from your machine. because unlike the way earlier we have to uninstall a license, right? So just to deactivate the product. So that is not the way that we have to do. You don't have an option to deactivate now because it's being activated using use LBM method. So rather you have to just run this command so that you can move this to other machine. But having on 2 different machines parallelly, that is something that you probably need to check with support guys.
Okay, no, that's perfect. Thank you.
Yeah.
And there's a few other questions, but we'll leave those to be asked, like the tables. Lexi, that was a great talk. I really appreciate you taking the time. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah.
And again, if there are any questions, don't forget you can always join in at the tables. But if the table is full and the speaker is not there, please give them some space to join so they can answer your questions. With that, we're going to move swiftly, and we're going to bring in Marian. She joins us from Belgium, and we'll be talking about adding context to your business dashboards. Marian?
I'm good. Instead of my camera, you get my mini me, my mini super me. I apologize for that.
That's okay.
Having some issues with the setup, so.
That's not a problem. We are quite happy that we are halfway through this. We've been an hour on, and we haven't had any massive tech issues, so fingers crossed for that. So Marian will be talking about how, by adding a few simple pointers, you can make life easy for your users to interact with your dashboards. Now with that, I'll let you take it away. I can see your screen is coming up. I love like this meta feeling that as you start, I can just see myself in like really tiny within your screens. You have, we look forward to hearing from you, and thank you for joining.
Yeah, I hope everyone can, I think you're all seeing my screen okay, because it's a little bit of a different setup and I can't really see what you're seeing, but I think this looks okay, right? If someone could say something, then I know I'm good. I'm assuming I'm okay. Okay, so thanks for that introduction, David. It seems like my past trips to London, and I'm talking pre-COVID, always had really poor timing. So it's great to finally make it here. I have a bit of a confession. This is actually my first talk on what I call a so-called more serious topic, in that it's not about what I usually do for fun or the things that inspire me, but it's more about what I do for work. And I hope that you will all take away a few tips from this session that you can start implementing at your workplace. In my limited experience, these things have really made a difference with my audience and how to get more insights out of the dashboards that I've built. So hopefully you can get some ideas from this. First, just a few words about myself. My name is Marian Arends. Like David said, I'm based in Belgium, born and raised. I currently work for Suez Water Technologies and Solutions, where I support our regional commercial organization to make better decisions using data and the power of visual analytics. I also run the Belgian Tableau user group, and we're actually planning something similar to this in a few weeks, months now. I think we're looking at September. So if anyone's interested to speak at that, feel free to reach out. I'm not going to give you the full rundown of my pedigree. If after this talk you're still interested to know a little bit more about me, you can come find me at the table, or you can look me up on LinkedIn. I think if you scan the code, that's going to take you to my Tableau public profile that has links to everything else. And the materials from this presentation I'll be posting on my blog as well, so you can always come back to it later. This is me and what I do for fun in Tableau. I'll be the first to say that all of these visualizations don't necessarily have any significant analytical value, but I had a lot of fun creating them. And the techniques that I picked up are things that I took back to all of my business dashboard. So for me, that's kind of a win-win. I couldn't get permission to show you some of my business projects in full. So I hope that by showing some bits and pieces and describing how some of these different elements can make a difference, I hope that will make up for that. Which brings me kind of to the title of my presentation. And when I came up with the idea for this talk, the first thing that came to mind was, how am I going to explain this to everyone? Because I am always very mindful of the fact that when I come up with something, in my mind, it sounds perfect, but it doesn't necessarily translate to others. So I did what everyone does: I go online, go to Google, and I looked up a few definitions. And this one really made sense to me. as what I'll be talking about is how adding a few additional elements to your business dashboards can really make a difference with how your users will interpret the information that is being presented to them. And that really brings me to what I've come to call my context cocktail. And I'm totally coining this phrase, by the way. These are like 5 simple things that you can add to make it easier for your users to digest the information onto your dashboards. And they're really simple things, but my experience has told me that they can really have a big impact. So we'll go through them one by one. I'll do a quick demo at the end. I hope that works. And then I'll take any questions if anyone has anything at the end. One of the things that I've started adding to all of my business dashboard are buttons. I love buttons, information buttons or explanatory buttons. They're really a simple way of providing additional context to users without cluttering your view, right? So in my information button, they typically consist of 3 sections. I will describe what's being visualized, and depending on what it is, it can be pretty detailed because I want the users to be able to understand what they are looking at and what insights they can gain from that information. Then I will typically go into detail on how that view is being filtered. And again, it kind of depends on the context, but I think it's important that people know what these different values represent and how filtering your view can change the visualization. And then I will typically add in some tips on how they can get more out of some of the interactive features of Tableau dashboards, because a lot of folks are not aware. So I tend to put that information into an explanatory button. That's kind of what I've come to call it. Second, one of my biggest pet peeves when I see other business dashboards that are being published is when people put together a dashboard and they put all the filters on there, but they don't take the time to change the titles of dimensions or measures. They tend to leave them to their generic name, and it doesn't really mean anything to anyone. So I think by changing that to an instruction or a guided question can really help your users understand how they can interact with your dashboard, right? Adding things like select or search or framing it as a question is a lot simpler than simply looking at a generic code that people don't understand what that means. So instructive filters are something that I use all the time. And then I think finally, using dynamic titles. So what tends to happen when folks filter a dashboard, they don't really remember what they filter. So by adding those values to the title of your viz, that can really help them frame that up. And finally, I think everyone knows by now that leaving tooltips to their default formatting is a no-no. Take 2 minutes to transform that into a sentence, which really helps folks better understand what is being visualized. And then I just wanted to show you quickly how you can make buttons. And really, it's the easy way. It's a trick I picked up. I honestly can't remember where I picked it up, but maybe someone can tell me later. I'm just going to switch up to Tableau. There we are. So a lot of the time what people do when they create buttons is they bring in images and shapes, but this is kind of a simple workaround and really offers up quite a lot of visibility. So we're going to start from a blank sheet. In my marks card, underneath in this section, I'm going to double click. It kind of creates a white pill. I'm going to type in I for information because we're making an information. Enter. First of all, I'm going to hide the title. I'm going to change the mark into a circle. We'll make it a little bit bigger, like that. Maybe I need to drag this out a bit as well. And that's always the tedious part. Okay, there we go. We're going to change this to label, to text, and then we're going to do a little bit of formatting. You kind of see the I here right on the left-hand side. We want that to be in the middle and a little bit bigger. So I'm going to click on label. Then we're going to go to text. And the font that I like to use for this is Georgia. So we're going to go there. We'll make it a little bit bigger. Typically 2022 should be good. I'll make that white. I'll make it bold. Okay. I'm going to change the alignment a little bit. We'll put it in the middle. And maybe we'll change the background a little bit. We'll make it dark like that. And then we're going to add our text in here. So that's our button done. And then we're going to bring this to our dashboard. Just going to take this off here. We're going to do it over. Just going to drag this onto our dashboard. We're going to hide the title. We'll resize it a little bit. Make that a little bit smaller. I think we can do, like that. We'll make it fit the entire view. And I typically just put it next to, this is not super pretty, but just for you to get an idea, I typically put it next to the title of my dashboard. And then people that know my work and how I put my views together, they know that when they hover over the button, they're going to get the information on how the data was collected, what's being visualized, how they can interact with it, etc. And there's actually different ways that you can use this. I like to just use a simple text button, so I put an I in, but instead of the I, you can use Unicode symbols. So these are my favorite ones. So instead of putting the I in, let's go here, just quickly show you, you can do the same with the Unicode symbol. And there's a wide range of symbols that you can use. I'm not going to build it all the way out, but if you kind of follow the same steps, you'll get something like this. And that's kind of what I used to show, to highlight to people that if you hover over that, it's going to tell you a little bit of how you can interact with the features onto your dashboard. I've also used kind of for a sort of revision tooltips. I'll put it next to a bigger number, and if you hover over that, that'll give you some additional context. So there's lots of different ways that you can use these buttons. And that was it for my presentation. I don't know how fast I went or if there's any time left, but or if we have any questions. I'm just going to stop sharing now.
Thank you very much. Right on time.
Excellent.
We saw a couple of people saying, "Oh, that's such a nice tip," and I'd never thought about doing it that way.
Yeah.
I agree with you. I think I'm a big fan of buttons, and I kind of quoted you on the chat to say, "Guide your users." I think that can never be overestimated how much guidance our users need, because they are not the ones building the visualization. I have a question for you from the group. At work, are you more on the floating side or tiled side? What is?
I'm floating, but I work a lot with containers. I love containers because they kind of give you that flexibility to move different elements across your dashboards, right? So it's definitely floating, but in containers. So that's kind of, is that in the middle? I don't know, but yeah, floating.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Marian. We appreciate you taking the time, and as I've mentioned before, there will be questions at the end. We're going to run through straight away to the next talk rather than taking a break to make sure that we give you that time for questions later on. And with that, we have our next speaker. Hannah is joining us today, and she's joining from Poland. What I can tell you is that Hannah will be talking about the index trick. I personally love using index. But today we'll learn about the why and the how-to of the index trick. Hannah has been helping people make sense of data at the Data School at Information Lab for over a year now. Her journey with Tableau began shortly before applying to Data School, and she would use LODs over table calcs whenever possible, particularly the nested ones. But with experience, she kind of came to the other side, and she now has a love for table calculations as well. And we'll talk about those and the index. Hannah, welcome. Thank you for joining.
Thank you, David. Hi, everyone. Thank you very much for having me. I hope everyone's enjoying the talk so far. I sure am myself. As mentioned already, I will be talking about the index trick, but before I get into that, I wanted to give a shout out to Charlie Duffern, who has introduced me to this approach first time, which was about a year ago. And I have written a blog post a few months back describing the original use case. And today I thought I would give you kind of the reasons why it works, and also show you the other side, another situation when you might use it. I think it might be a bit more technical in terms of using Tableau, so I hope you are ready for it. Now, oh, hold on. There we go. Now, the index trick is an example of how we can embrace the way Tableau works to deal with its limitations. And it's to understand the rules that govern how Tableau builds the view to be able to kind of make it show what we want. So I hope that sounds pretty good. But some of you may wonder what actually is the index trick, because to my great regret, index trick is not a widely used term yet. So basically, it is just using index function. Now, you can easily take it further to use other table calculations. And using table calculations in Tableau is not a trick in itself, because it's just using part of its functionality. The trick comes in when we use it as a filter and you actually put some thought into it, because using table calculations as filter allows you to control what you see without affecting the numbers that you see. Now, that may sound a bit like magic, but let's have a look at why it works. How does it work? And to understand that, we need to go to order of operations. And order of operations is pretty much those rules that I mentioned previously. So it gives us the information of which operations are performed when. And so we start with extract filters and we end on trend and reference lines. There's a lot happening between, and I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole, but it pretty much comes down to how Tableau queries the data. What I want you to focus on here is table calc filters. Now, table calc filters are almost the last thing that is being calculated, but it's also filtering the view. And because it's calculated after everything else has been already done, it won't affect the numbers that we see, but it will just affect what we see in that view. Now, if that sounds a bit crazy or not that understandable, let's just jump into Tableau and see index trick in action. So to demonstrate one way of using index trick, I want to calculate the year-over-year value for sales. Now, it may seem like a simple question, and it actually is a fairly popular one. But if you have worked with Tableau and you try to answer this, it's not that straightforward to get it formatted nice as well. But let's start from the beginning. So first of all, I need the order date. As you may have noticed, I am using the Google Superstore here. And I need also my sales. Now, I can see sales going across. To get the year-over-year value, I'm going to use percent difference table calculation. You can see that it's table calculation, but by that lovely delta sign. Now, as I hover over any of the marks, you can see that percent difference from defaults to difference from previous. What this means is that for the first mark that we have in our view, we won't have that value because we don't have the previous value for that first data point. Okay, so how can we format our view so that it looks nice and we don't have any empty spaces like we have here for 2016? The problem here that it will always happen for that first row. So if we decide to just filter out 2016, I'm going to come across the same problem, but this time it will be for 2017. So that doesn't work. Okay, what else we can do? We can try the hide option. So if I try hide, that seems to be doing the job now. But what happens if the data change? So what happens if the end user needs to have the option to filter the data? Now, if I add the year on filter again, I once again remove 2016, I have the same issue that I had previously. And that is because when you hide specific section of the data. So you don't hide the first mark, but you rather hide just 2016. So that again doesn't work. Now, what I also don't like about hide approach is that you don't have any visual cue any information that you have actually hidden something from the view. So there is no, apart from having the year of order date and sum of sales, you don't have any indication that there was something else done to the view. So what can we do instead? I'm going to add now index function and put it on text. And what you can see, how you can see that index function simply numbers the marks that we have in the view. So that's fairly easy. I think actually getting the index to number the marks the way you want it to be can be often the most tricky part. Thankfully here, it's quite painless. But what I can do now is I can make a logic statement. So I can check if index is greater than 1. Now what I can see at this point is that I get true value for all of the marks apart from the first one. And so I'm going to move that index greater than 1 onto filters. I'm going to select true only. And I end up with only the marks that have that year-over-year value. I also have a visual indication that I have changed something in my view. And if I also move the change the filtering or the range of the data, so if I again get rid of 2016, without adding anything else, I can see only, once again, the marks that have that year-over-year value. So it is much more flexible than using the hide approach, and it also gives me the indication that something has been done to the view. So that's one of the situations where you might be tempted to use index trick instead. And some of the reasons why having that visual cue that something else has been done to your visualization can be really important whenever you're handing over your work and someone else needs to pick it up. I'm pretty sure people will be very grateful whenever your work is as transparent as possible. So this was one of the situations where I would use an index trick. But over the last year or so, I came across pretty much 2 categories of using the index trick. The first one is exactly what I've just shown you now, when you just want to hide something. So something they can easily do with hide option. The second situation is when you have, and that's something that I actually originally came across for coming up with the index trick, where you have a very complex workbook, and so finding solutions to to get the right numbers ends up in a fairly messy look. And that's once again where index trick can be very helpful to just clean up what the user see and making sure that your numbers are right. And that is it for me. Thank you very much so far. If you're interested in the other example of the index trick, make sure to head to hannikowska.com, which is my new blog post I'm very proud of, and it references all of my blog posts so far. Feel free to reach out to me on Twitter, on LinkedIn, as always. And thank you very much for having me.
Thank you very much for taking the time to sharing that with us. And I think it's something that everyone would use at any point when they're building their visualizations. We do have a question for you, Hannah. So the question is, I feel like I am constantly having to get around the limits of Tableau. So this is super useful. Extending it though, is there a double index trick for multiple levels of aggregation?
So I think a good example is the original situation that I was dealing with, because I needed to use a measure filter to actually filter my data. So let me just go back a few slides to my order of operations, and that's not working. So measure filters, which means I was pretty far down that order of operations. But the thing is, you can use quite a few layers of table calculations, and the very last step where you add that table calculation filters, that happens after everything else has been computed. So it's difficult for me to specifically answer this question because it will definitely depend on your situation, as well, everything is. But I think there's always, it's definitely good one to try out because it helped me get out of quite a few issues and quite a few problematic situations.
I don't have a name for the person that asked the question. So if you want to join Hannah's table after all the sessions, do, and you can delve into kind of the actual problem and what are you trying to solve. Hannah, thank you very much for taking the time. We really appreciate having you here. And with that, we're going to segue to the next talk. And after calculations, we're going to be covering maps. Mark, to talk about tall maps for wide screens, addressing the challenge of creating mapped content of tall regions, for instance, the UK, New Zealand, California, which create a lot of the white space when viewed on the screen. The talk will discuss and suggest some of these approaches. Hello, Mark. Thank you very much for joining. Love the background.
Thank you very much. Thanks, David. And
thank you.
I'm looking forward to it. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
No worries. And great to share this as well.
You can see me, you can hear me. Great.
Take it away.
Grand. Thank you very much. Let me just make sure I can see everything I want to on this side. There we go. Right. Fab. And I would definitely recommend putting my slides into full screen so that you get the full effect. That's where the interesting stuff's going to be, just over this side. Just hit that icon on the top right corner of the slide window. I'm not going to do much by way of introduction, but my Twitter handle's in the bottom right corner there. And the final slide will point you towards some resources on the topic. So what is a tall map and why do I think that they're problematic? Well, what I mean by a tall map is a map of a geographic area that covers great latitude, but not much longitude. So here's an example of one, Italy. It's quite long, and although it does angle a bit, it doesn't really cover much width at all. And the same could be said for other places such as Argentina, New Zealand, as David said, Portugal, or perhaps more familiar to this audience, the UK. So that's what a tall map is. What about a wide screen? Well, a wide screen is really just a screen. We've all got used to working in landscape most of the time. Our laptops are wide, monitors are wide, and if we're giving a presentation in person, the big screen we've got our slides on is also usually quite wide. But it's a combination of those two, a tall map and a wide screen, which can create a problem. Now, most of the time it goes unnoticed. If you're looking at a map of the contiguous US on a monitor, for example, then it fills up pretty neatly. And the same goes on your phone if you've got it in landscape mode, just like this. But if you try to do the same in the UK, then you might have a bit of a problem. We're just not used to seeing it apparently on its side. Fortunately, most smartphones allow us to rotate pretty easily, so a map of the UK works just fine on a mobile too. But put a tall map on a wide screen that won't rotate, and you've got a problem. Your map isn't filling anywhere near the full size of your screen. Now, I say there's a problem, but really it's not. What it is a constraint. It's a set of conditions that we need to work around. Or arguably, it's a set of conditions that we might embrace instead. It's an opportunity to do something a little bit different. And that opportunity boils down to either a default, we could choose to do nothing and embrace the white space that we've been gifted by this setup, or alternatively, we could find a way to augment this view, push that map to the side, and do something with the additional space that we've created. And the sorts of things we could do to augment our map fall into one of two categories. First, we could take the same data that's been mapped and show it in a different way in order to add context. Or that context might come in a different form, which we could achieve by adding another measure and comparing it with that which we had on our map. So I'm going to run through a few examples of what I mean here, and I'm going to share a series of different ways to supplement a map with a secondary view. And to do that, I need a tall map to begin with. So here is one. This is the state of California. The counties are color-coded according to the rate of unemployment in January 2014. So this is my default view. It's what I see if I choose to do nothing beyond the standard map that Tableau will serve up to me. Now, by referring to the legend for this chart, I can see that there are two counties that really stand out. One in the very southeast and another to the north and a little bit inland. But I'm not really familiar with the counties of California, and it would take me a while looking at this to come up with a good estimate of which county ranked third for unemployment rate and what that figure might be. So let's augment this map with a second chart to give us that context and the ability to ask some more questions. So now on the left, I've got my original view still, but on the right, a bar chart showing me the unemployment rate by county in descending rank order. And from this, I could work out that Sutter County had the third highest unemployment rate, which was around 16%. And that the gap between second and third ranked counties was huge compared with the typical differences elsewhere. Or I could show a different type of bar chart. This one orders the counties according to their latitude from north to south. The advantage this might bring would be that it allows me to conduct a more direct comparison between neighboring counties, but it's getting quite cluttered. I'm squeezing a lot of categories in here, although it might help me to identify individual counties that are smaller. For instance, the area around San Francisco is quite densely populated. The areas there, the counties there are smaller, and they could be harder to pick out from the map alone. Now, a way around that might be to create a second map that shows an inset. So this is a zoomed in view of the section called out on the left. We see this approach quite a lot in data journalism in maps of the UK that call out London and Manchester in more detail, where the centres are very densely populated. And while we're considering a map alongside a map, there are, of course, other ways of showing mapped data. And in this example, I've created a tile map. The relative locations of each area aren't exact, but they're pretty close. And this type of view allows us to name each county. So if we're looking for somewhere specific, then we can find it. With interactivity, then hovering over a county in one map could then highlight it to us in the other map. So we might be interested in a certain point in the map on the left and can call it out on the right. Or we might be interested in the county of Napa from the tile map and want to use the map on the left to help us locate it with more accuracy. A twist on that same idea is a hex map. The same principles apply, but in this case, the counties are plotted into hexagons rather than square tiles. The advantage of one over the other could depend upon the geographic nature of the areas, but this view allows for a bit more squeeze on that vertical axis. In both cases there, I've generated the tiles and hexagons myself, but there are plenty of templates out there for common geographies. So that's enough of secondary maps. What about some dots? As an analyst trying to understand the data, this is where I might often start out. So on the right here, I've created a dot plot so we can see the nature of the distribution and quite how much of an outlier the two top counties really are. So this was a method I first saw Sarah Battersby from Tableau demonstrate at a conference a couple of years ago, and I've used this to good effect in my work. And that's all well and good, but I can't see all of the points here, so it's not obvious how many are concentrated towards the center. This alternative will allow us to do exactly that. So here we've got the exact same metric on the y-axis, and along the x-axis I've created another measure based upon the ranking of each country's unemployment rate. Now I like this approach because it provides consistent separations between each point on the horizontal so that we can see the size of each step on the vertical more clearly. Now, some people like to jitter their dot plots to give them a bit more spacing on the x-axis, and typically that's done with assignment of random numbers to create horizontal position. What I've done in this case is actually a variant on that idea. In this case, the value across the x-axis is actually based upon the longitude of the county. And this helps us to create a little bit of separation between the dots that might have the same unemployment rate, and also give us something of analytical value if there's a relationship between the unemployment rate and, say, the distance from the West Coast. So those are a bunch of ideas relating to the same data set. What about if we could bring in a secondary measure? What could we put on the right-hand side now? Well, for starters, we could look at two maps. In this case, on the left, we've got the unemployment rate again, but on the right, the per capita income for each state. Now, ordinarily with two measures, if we wanted to look for a relationship between them, we might use a scatter plot. But with this view here, we can also consider location. And if I spent a long time looking at it, then I might be able to infer that there's an inverse relationship between unemployment and income. But it's not all that obvious here, and a scatter plot would show that. So let's try that. Instead of the map on the right, let's put the unemployment rate against per capita income on a scatter plot. And here we do indeed see that there's an inverse relationship between the two variables, although those two counties are real outliers once again. But this view might lead me to consider what other factors are at play. Is this partly due to noisy data, where there's a smaller population perhaps? So I could consider the population of each county instead of their income. So let's try that. So this is the final alternative I'm going to share with you, which combines two of the examples we've seen previously. So now on the right, I've got a second measure to compare again, but rather than using the absolute size of the labour force, which would give some massive outliers in the densely populated areas, I've used the relative ranking of each county based upon that labour force to separate them, which both gives us a variable, but also generates nice spacing between our dots. Or having considered all that, I might review all those options and decide actually I was better off with the map alone for the point that I want to make to my audience. White space need not be our enemy to steal the title of an excellent book. It can bring better focus and allow this view to breathe a little bit. Now, I could have gone through various more examples. What I would encourage with any data set is to explore the options available to you given the constraints that may be imposed. So this is not a prescription. The data set, the time available, and personal preference are all strong factors when deciding how to visualize your geographic data and what supplements it, if anything. So I've begun a blog post on this topic at pointsofviz.com. For now, it contains the links to an array of useful resources that I cited when conducting this presentation. And once I've finished writing it, I'll post the full blog in the fullness of time. So that's probably my 10 minutes up. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Mark. That was great, and I think you really kind of. I particularly enjoyed it because it wasn't just as you mentioned. It's not a prescription, right? It's asking questions, which is something that sometimes we as analysts sometimes can forget to keep iterating in our heads and trying to explore different ways of looking at the data. I think it was fascinating. As Mark mentioned, you can always look him up on Twitter, and we look forward to that blog post. And with that, we're going to move on to the next session. Thank you very much, Mark. The next one, it's going to be Sedale. Hi, Sedale. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. Will be talking to us about knowledge versus power. So when building your skills, you can often feel a little going between visiting, webinars, tutorials, and trainings, and which is best for getting good at Tableau. What's the right mix? Let's discuss. So that's what we'll be hearing about from Sedale this afternoon. Hey, how are you doing?
Doing great. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, can hear you perfect. Can't see your screen just yet.
Share.
Yes, it's coming on. And with that,
okay. Can everyone see that?
Yeah, we can. It's still on, not in presentation mode, but I'm sure that's going to be fixed. Take it away.
Yep. Perfect. Thanks, David. And thanks, everybody. This is really fun. It was a really fun couple of hours. So what I'm talking about today, I call it knowledge versus power, but it's mostly to be provocative. What I'm going to be talking about really is how to use the different ways that we learn, trainings, webinars, PowerPoints like this one, this talk, but actually also using Tableau as a way to really build your Tableau skills. So it's a quick talk, so I'm going to really share through with you. First, introduce myself so you have an understanding of who I am. I'm going to talk a little bit about the differences between practicing with Tableau and practice and using the training, and then end with the balance between them and how I kind of break up the way that I learn in Tableau. So quickly about me, I am a digital insights analyst, which is a bunch of fancy words for I answer this question. What are people saying about us? What are people saying about my clients, their business, their issues? And I use digital data to uncover those answers. I'm here in the Washington, D.C. area in Virginia. So I'm a part of the DC Tableau user group, which is how I got into this great community. Back in June, I did get certified with my Tableau Desktop Specialist, which is that first level of certification. A quick plug for the Certifiably Tableau month. If you get certified or you at least purchase a certification this month, you can help Tableau address equity in the data community, which I think is awesome. You can also get a discount, so you benefit as well. So I'd encourage you, if you are thinking about certifications, to take advantage of that. I'm happy to talk about certifications later as well. When I'm not creating vizzes or working at my job, I'm either watching sports, learning about wine, or getting into health and fitness. So this talk was first inspired by a question I got on LinkedIn, but I think we all have this same experience. You see a talk, maybe it's a Viz Connect with Jeffrey Schaefer, who's a Tableau Zen master and author of the book of Dashboards, the big book of Dashboards, which we all know and love. And you watch the tips that he gives, you watch some of the tricks that he employs, maybe it's something with maps, and you're just so inspired. You're ready to go, you want to take all that great information, and you just assume that once you go to Tableau, this will be you. You're just adding things and you're taking everything you've heard from him and you're just implementing it. Everything's going wonderfully. Unfortunately for most of us, what really happens is we open Tableau and it's about as blank as the stare we give it because we don't know what happened. Between those 2 points, you get frustrated, you're trying to remember pieces of it. Some things weren't as clear as you thought they were going to be. There's a bit of a disconnect. And I think that happens for everyone, but definitely for people who are new to the tool and learning it, it can be frustrating to come out of these talks and not be able to move as quickly as you thought you could or as quickly as you saw in that training. So the way I like to break it out is through layers that kind of iterates over time, so that instead of going straight to the most fancy of tools, you can kind of build on your own skill set. So I try to take this layered approach, and I love this visual here. This one's around martial arts with Bruce Lee there, but there's another one about musicianship. Don't worry about what it says at the end, you should be practicing. The first layer is think about things that are second nature to you. What are the things that you just have to know in order to do your job? So if you are in finance, maybe table calcs you just have to have down. Maybe you need to have maps down because you work in maps for your job. Either way, make sure that you have those things down. And if you need a training, start with the training and then practice to make sure that that stuff is down, because then you'll get familiar with the tool. Then the second layer, just find useful or interesting. So that's when you can start to think about animations that you might see, some of the tools that we talked about. Maybe the index filter is something you can play around with. But one tip I got from Lindsay Betzendahl, who owns Project Health Viz, and her site, I believe, is called vizanddata.com, is to just, instead of trying to remember it all, find places to save it. So whether it's favoriting something on Tableau Public, or going to a blog, or bookmarking things, you don't have to remember everything. The great thing about our jobs is 9 times out of 10, you aren't going to be creating a viz with someone staring over your shoulder, right? You'll have time to reference things or look things up when you're creating a visual. So it's okay if you don't have it memorized, just make sure you know where you can go to get that information. Another thing I like to do is take training breaks. So every so often, if I feel like I've done kind of, webinar after webinar after webinar, I'll take a week, take 2 weeks, and just work in Tableau exclusively. It helps for 2 reasons. One, you can see what you remember of those webinars and things. But second, see where there are gaps. So maybe you want to go use an LOD and you realize you don't really know how they work as well as you thought you did. So that's something that you can do in your next training. Or maybe there's a parameter that is not working the way you thought it would. So maybe parameters might be a place to explore in the next webinar that you go to, the next video you look at, etc. And then when you do go to trainings, I would really encourage you to look at longer things like certifications or paths. If you use the Tableau e-learning, there are paths you can take for Tableau Analyst versus Tableau Designer or Data Steward, Tableau Server. That talk around LBLM was really awesome, so that's something I want to look into. But it gives you the ability to be more hands-on. It gives you the ability to go deeper into the things that you're learning, instead of taking kind of that one-off, that 1 hour where you didn't really learn anything before or after, which is where some of that disconnect can come from. last thing I always encourage, do what works for you. Whatever the process is that makes the most sense for you, I would definitely encourage that. So starting to wrap this thing up, not everybody learns by doing, but everyone does after they're learning. What I mean by that is not everyone can just go into Tableau and play around and mess around and come up with really good business, or at least even figure out why something might not be working. But after you do that work, to go to a Tableau user group or read a book or things like that, make sure to spend some time actually in the tool. With anything that's technical like this, the time you spend practicing builds that muscle memory that you need to actually be performant in Tableau. Find a balance between learning and doing. Most often, people are far more on the learning side than the doing side because it's a lot easier. You can sign up for this user group, you know what time it is, you can attend for those 2 hours. Maybe you spent money on a course, so like that's another motivation, versus it can be difficult to just go into Tableau and start working. I'll say, the one thing I tell everyone, no matter what the topic is when in doubt, ask the data fam, ask the community. I think Heidi's talk might be about the community, but they're all excellent resources. Sarah's an awesome resource here with the London Tableau group. David, I'm sure everybody, all the speakers will be more than happy to talk to you about different topics. So use us all, and you can definitely use me. I am on LinkedIn, I'm on Twitter. I'm most active on Twitter, but you can find me on LinkedIn as well. I'm blessed to have a name that's pretty unique. So if you Google Sadale, you're either going to find me or the basketball player I was named after. So as long as you don't see a Lakers jersey, you should be okay. Otherwise, I think that's it. I may have another minute or two, but I'm happy to answer any questions or look forward to the next talk.
No, that's perfect. Thank you very much. That a really, really good talk. I think there was something that you called out that really resonates to me, and particularly around this time when we're all at home and it's easy for people to look around and say, oh, this person has done 5 courses, the other has done 10. Oh, look, that person learned how to play the guitar, the piano, and the violin in the last 3 months, right? So there's a lot of pressure around kind of looking to the side. What's your advice around that? How can people maybe focus on their own growth without trying to compare with whatever other people are doing?
Yeah, it's an excellent point. I'd say, the quickest way to do that is to start with your own goal. Have a goal for yourself. I think too often we look out at someone that has 5 badges and we think that's good, but if our goal isn't to have 5, no one's goal is to have 10 Tableau badges, right? Your goal is to be really good and really, skilled at your tool and use it to get promoted, use it to be a really high performer at your job. So make sure you're focused on your goal and not just the outcomes that other people are getting.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Sadale, for your talk. We really appreciate you taking the time sharing that with us. We'll move on to the next one. We have 2 more talks before we break for networking and you have a chance to ask all the speakers. The next speaker that we have this afternoon is Heidi, and she'll be talking about community. As Tableau community is one of the most vibrant and welcoming technology communities in the world. But what's in it for you? Hear about Heidi's journey in the Tableau community today. Hey, thank you very much for joining.
Hi, David. Thanks for having me.
Love the background. Is that all pictures from your travels?
Yes, that's about 200 pictures, like most of them from the most recent PC. So many of you are on there in my living room. So yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. As I said, it's great to have you here and talking about community. And with that, I'll let you take it away.
Thank you. All right, so as David said, the Tableau community is very, very welcoming, but maybe you're still trying to find your way into the community. So how can you get involved? How can you make the best of your experience? The following are 12 steps that helped me personally find my way. So how can you start out? First of all, network. I have to mention that I slipped into the Tableau community unnoticed by anyone, least of all by myself. I was writing my bachelor thesis on the topic of Tableau and I had to figure out the software on my own. And I found it both staggeringly simple and mind-bogglingly frustrating. Over dinner with a friend, I was asked how things were going, and I immediately launched into a rant how Tableau failed at the easiest things that Excel could do in a heartbeat. My friend calmly listened to my rant and then suggested that he reach out to a friend of his who might be able to help me with all of that. So a short while later, I was talking to said friend of a friend, who was Andreas Kollmorgen of the Information Lab in Germany, and he helped me pro bono with my thesis. He also asked what my plans were after graduation, and we've now been colleagues for going on 3 years. What can you learn from that? Reach out to your friends. The fact is that we are connected with everybody in this world through 7 people or fewer. So if you need help or you find yourself looking for an opportunity, just talk to people who are likely to know someone who knows someone who knows someone. And sooner than you know it, you will find yourself in the place you wanted to be. Number 2, visit events. I went to my first community event in 2017, where I met many people who would later become my colleagues, my clients, my mentors, my friends. I widened my network and met people I never would have otherwise met. I also learned about Tableau Public for the first time and about the community on Twitter. I've since attended multiple Tableau user groups around the world. I've been to many data-related meetups, and I started Data Plus Women Germany together with 2 colleagues. So what can you learn from that? Visit as many events as you can. Look for a Tableau user group near you, such as the LondonTUG, or check out data-related groups on Meetup. There's plenty to go out there. Number 3, tweet. 2 days after my first community event, I created my Twitter account. I started reaching out to people who had written helpful blogs, and I began pushing my own visualizations as much as I could. A few weeks later, I received my first viz of the day for this trapezium tile map that I developed. Imagine my surprise when a year after that, Klaus Scholze won the Iron Viz Europe contest with the exact same chart type, and he was kind enough to even credit me in that viz for inspiration. Through Twitter, I have made many friends around the world, many of whom I wouldn't meet until years later. These friendships meant that I had plenty of people to visit on my recent journey around half the world earlier this year. And it absolutely fills my heart with joy to have this kind of family on the other side of the globe. What can you learn from that? Maybe you're shy about talking to people face to face. Maybe you live in a remote location and there are no events near you. Maybe you just don't like getting up from the couch. These things are no excuse to not get involved in the Tableau community. Use Twitter and tweet away. Bombard the community with your brilliance and reach out and find new friends. Ask for feedback and you shall receive. Give credit where credit is due and it will be returned. Number 4, build a public portfolio. When I applied for a job at the Information Lab Germany, I included a link to my Tableau Public profile in my CV. This allowed me to skip a whole step in the application process. As a consultant, some clients will ask for proof of my skills. Since I can't exactly show them dashboards that I built for other clients, I usually introduce them to my Tableau Public portfolio. This validates my skill set and sets their minds at ease for our continued work. In my trainings, some business users aren't convinced that they will ever be able to live and breathe Tableau as easily as I or other trainers. I usually show them my first Tableau Public visits with all the standard color scales and all bar charts and little refined standard tooltips. Shame on me. I tell them that Tableau is a journey and that everybody can find their own path. What can you learn from that? Publish away, delete nothing. Create a living portfolio that shows your development. Use it to convince employers and clients of your skills. Use it to visualize the story of your own Tableau journey. Number 5, blog. I started blogging for the German corporate blog of the Information Lab. With the help of Chris McClellan and the Data Fam project, I started my very own blog last year. Why? Well, first of all, I love writing and I love data visualization, so blogging seemed like the obvious next step. It's also great for finding answers really fast. I can't tell you the number of times I've had to look up my own blog posts because I had forgotten how I did something in the past. This has 2 very pleasant side effects. First, when a colleague or a client has a question on how to do something, I don't have to type it out in a 20-step instructional email. I can simply direct them to a helpful blog post I wrote on the very topic they were inquiring after. And second of all, when people search for my content online, Google has stopped asking them whether they were searching for the late Heidi Kabel instead, a rather famous German actress who passed away 10 years ago and whose name is eerily similar to mine. What can you learn from that? If people find your posts helpful, they will share them within their networks. And you can help yourself and others find answers to their questions fast. Number 6, speak. Looking back, public speaking has given my personal development one hell of a shot forward. 3 years ago, I was the one to hover awkwardly in the background while the man on my team presented the results of our group effort. A year later, I participated in my first Tableau Fringe Festival. And just last year, I spoke at the Tableau conference in Europe. Presenting will allow you to build a library of content. I participated in my first TFF in December 2018, and I've since held that same presentation another 7 or 8 times at guest lectures and info evenings, and whenever I needed to pull a presentation out of my hat. Your presentations are also a good conversation starter. A client once mentioned over lunch that they were catching up on the recordings of TCE sessions, and they talked about one in particular that they had liked, about how conventional BI was killing businesses. Turns out that was my session, and we chatted about it a lot after that. What can you learn from that? People are scared of speaking in front of an audience themselves, so they might be impressed and subconsciously even somewhat grateful that you were the one to brave the stage so that they didn't have to. They will associate positive emotions with you. You will also improve your own skill set, your soft skills. Not only does public speaking become a little less scary with every presentation you hold, you also become more confident in human interaction and in your own competence and expertise in general. So these were the first 6 tips, but how do you go on? Number 7, stay engaged. Community engagement is not a sprint, it's a marathon. Prove to others that you are not a one-off show, but become a consistent contributor. Continue to tweet, viz, blog, and speak. Nurture your network and focus long-term. Number 8, say yes. A friend once told me, if an opportunity bites you in the arse, you take it first and figure out how to do it later. Be brave and push yourself. There's so much more inside you than you know. Become the person you want to be by stopping to tell yourself what you cannot do. Number 9, find your passion. All the things I mentioned before take effort, so you should choose something that energizes you in turn. It's natural to try things out, but once you've found what you love, you should concentrate on doing just that to the best of your abilities. For me, that's writing and public speaking, so I continue to blog, lead Data Plus Women Germany, and speak at community events such as this one. Number 10, get a cheerleader. Find somebody to hold you accountable for your goal. My personal cheerleader pushed me to apply for my first Tableau Fringe Festival. This photo was taken just a few minutes after I hit the send button on my application. You can see all of these thoughts running through my head. Oh God, why did you push me to apply? Thank you, thank you, thank you for pushing me to apply. Oh no, what if they don't take me? And oh no, what if they do take me? Just recently, I went to my personal cheerleader and told him, thank you for continuously pushing me over the cliff so that I may realize that I can actually fly. Number 11, help others. Help others and be helped in turn. All this will get you only half as far if you do it merely for your own personal gain. People say that karma is a bitch, but personally, I have found karma to be my best friend. If you're only out there to help yourself, you don't really build a community. You just end up with a whole bunch of self-important show people. So support and be supported in turn, and the community will come alive. And number 12, and most importantly, don't wait. There's nothing holding you back except your own fears. Life starts on the other side of fear, and the community is there for you to dive right in. So don't wait, start now. Thank you.
That was great, Heidi. Thank you very much for sharing. And as you can see, Heidi has shared with you her Twitter page as well as information on how you can reach out to her for any questions. Don't forget, we'll be moving to the tables in about 10 minutes or so after the last talk. We really appreciate you taking the time. And again, great background. Love and love the talk as well. With that, we're going to move to the last session of the day. So you've heard about Blueprint, we've heard about the community, we've heard about improving your skills. And Pablo Gomez is one of our co-leads for the Tableau London user group, will share with us 5 practical tips to help you get your next Tableau role. So a killer CV will help you get your next Tableau role. Pablo, I can see you. I hope you can hear me. I love your T-shirt as well.
Thank you.
I feel like
Data
on this, and I can't see your screen just yet, but I'm sure everything is going to be okay.
Give me 1 second. Should be able to see my screen.
Perfect. With that, take it away, and we look forward to hearing what you have to say.
Fantastic. Thank you. So thank you so much, David. My name is Pablo Gomez. Just mentioning a couple of seconds ago. You can find me on all these social networking places. I mean, it's very easy to find me. I'm a senior data visualization designer, and I've been doing my own consultancy for more than a decade. And one of the things that I have found difficult sometimes is to actually find either new clients or new projects. And what I'm going to show you in the next few minutes is basically not a rule or something that it's set in stone, and it might be different for everyone, to be honest. But the idea is to show you 5 practical tips, 5 practical things that I usually do when I have to find a new project or when I have to find new clients. This may work really well for me, may not work for you, but the idea is that I'm giving you some ideas of how I do it and what I do. And this comes really handy at this time after COVID-19, and many people that are looking for new projects and they don't know how to start. It happened to me many years ago. I actually didn't know exactly where to go, how to start, where to start looking for. So the first one is obviously a good curriculum vitae. Basically, your CV is the course of your life. So basically, it will show what you are supposed to know about, what's your experience and what you're supposed to show the people you're going to be working with. So let's do this. This is me, yes, sitting in front of the computer and saying, okay, I have to write my CV. Where do I start? And this is based on experience as well. And I have talked to many people over the years, and I have come with this idea. So basically, my CV will look like this. At the top, at very top, there will be this header where I have my name, my full name, the address, right? People will like to know where you live, basically. Phone, email address, easy to contact. If you have a blog or a website, there people can look at you, look for you, or what you do as well. That will be the right place to place that information. So next, there will be this section. This section is the key skills and expertise. So this is where usually, if not a machine, but recruiters will actually spend probably just a few seconds to scan your CV. And this is the next thing they need to learn. This is the next thing they need to look at. And if they are hooked right at the beginning with your skills and what you can do, it's more likely they're going to continue reading your CV. They're going to continue looking at it into more detail. So 4 or 5 lines, not more than that, telling who you are, what your best skills are. And as you can see on the second line, I'm adding my Tableau public profile. And I'm going to come back to that. And as Heidi was mentioning just a couple of minutes ago, it's super important to get that in place. Your business experience, I usually have on the left-hand side a simple company name and from when and to where. Then basically a short description of the company and what they do. So people have to put into context, not all the companies are known sometimes. And the title, of the role that I occupy and the key functions and responsibilities. And I continue creating different sections based on all the projects that I have worked with. And in the case of companies where projects where I have worked for more than 2 different projects, as you can see at the bottom, basically I detail that into different roles that I have been part of. Tips for a top killer, no longer than 2 pages. So you would say that's impossible. How can I put my whole experience into 2 pages? Believe me, I've been doing this for a long time and you can fit your whole CV in no more than 2 pages. Use keywords, keep it clean and simple, right? And don't you ever lie or exaggerate your experience. If you created this amount of visualizations in the past, say that. There's no shame or nothing to exaggerate on your CV. Next, number 2, BIS portfolio. And this is super important. Show what you can do. Nowadays, and thanks to Tableau Public and also several projects along the community, we have Makeover Monday, Sports Biz Sunday, Biz for Social Good, Iron Quest, all sorts of different projects. You can get information, community, and be part of all that. And basically, start building your own portfolio. Start visualizing. Find your own voice. Find the way you want to showcase what you can do. It could be technical. It could be into graphic design, like myself. I love combining graphic design and visualizations. And you may say, I'm not going to do any of this on any of the projects. That's true. But the funny thing is, once you show this to a potential client, a future client, or someone else, they already know what you can do. They already know that you are able to do all the stuff. So the rest is implied and there will be no issues at all. Number 3, LinkedIn. Oh, some people are scared of LinkedIn nowadays, but LinkedIn is not Twitter, it's not Instagram. So it's probably one of the most powerful tools you can find nowadays. So basically build a top header, say exactly who you are, what you do, what you can do. Use a nice picture. Don't use a picture with a glass of beer or a glass of wine or something like that. Be serious. This is LinkedIn. Activities, interaction and engagement with others are super visible. Every time you interact and you interact with others, they are part of your profile. So people can see you are very active in there. Experience, don't go into detail, just a brief summary of what you have been doing. Certifications on learning. If you're using LinkedIn Learning or the certifications, the Tableau certifications, add them to your profile. Follow like-minded people that will add value to you and you can add value to them at the same time. Follow organizations that interest you. Share your visualizations on LinkedIn, super important. And most important than everything else, LinkedIn is, for me, it's a professional social place. It's not Twitter and it's not Instagram. I'm not even close to TikTok. Recruiters, number 4. These are probably your best next friends. Now, there are several different approaches to get into recruiters, but there are 575 million registered people globally on LinkedIn. 14 million jobs at the moment, as of the 10th of April this year, open on LinkedIn globally. 90% of those jobs are managed by recruiters. So imagine the amount of jobs you can reach with them. There are more than 500,000 recruiters on LinkedIn here in UK alone. So what's the best way to approach them to find them? Well, very easily. You just use the searching engines. And also another thing that I usually do, I go to my contacts, especially the ones that are contractors like me or consultants like me, and I just look at their connections if they're allowed to see. And if I find that those connections are recruiters, I may approach them. I will try to connect with them. So, for example, let's say I want to connect with Andrew, who's a recruiter. What I do is I don't simply hit the done button and I send the invitation away. What I do is I will just type a quick message. Everybody loves to at least have some context or who is actually sending an invite. Please do that. Never send an invitation without, if you don't know that person, without even just a brief message. Interact with them. This is an example, a quick example of something that happened to me. I was actually looking for a project. I asked about that project, and it was already occupied. But at least I already know that person, and I'm in contact with him. He's going to be aware of that I exist for the next project or anything else that they find in place. Number 5, job sites. Job sites are super important, but there is nothing better than networking. Job sites are great, but we have to build up all the other 4 steps first. You have to have your CV in place, networking, and all the stuff. These are some of the most useful and most common job sites in the UK. I personally use a lot Total Jobs, which are the ones that have helped me a lot, CV Library, and last but not least, Glassdoor. Those are the 3 that are the ones that I use the most, and they have helped me a lot to get projects. As a recap, and I know it's very quick, it's been very quick, have a killer CV. That's super important. No more than 2 pages. Don't lie, don't exaggerate. Viz portfolio, start vising, start creating your portfolio. Tableau Public is the best place to showcase what you can do. LinkedIn, be active. Start building your profile, interact with people. Number 4, recruiters, make them your friend. Just join, interact with them, approach them. Number 5, job sites, stay close to them, look for different new projects, stay active. And thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much, Pablo. That was great. A lot of great tips to round up the day and all the sessions. I think we had a really kind of nice flow and kind of landing at this. We learned about, as we mentioned, we learned about community, we learned about tools, and now kind of how to set up your next successful role. Thank you very much for sharing that with us. We are just a couple minutes away from me to stop this summer sessions and allow you back. What I want to share with you very quickly is that we already have a date for the next session, and that's the one that you have just there. So Tableau Data Kids, we're going to be running a new user group on the 17th of August 2020. So it's going to be the 3rd Monday of August. We look forward to having you join. Look up on Twitter and LinkedIn as well for the announcement. We'll thank all the speakers for taking the time sharing their experience with us, and I think there was a lot of kind of really neat things to learn today. We appreciate you taking the time and spending these 2 hours with us. And with that, I'll allow everyone to go back to the tables. As I've mentioned, the speakers, each one has a table. You can spend some time speaking to them. We should have somewhere around 10 minutes or so to engage with them. If you're on a table that has a speaker marked and the speaker is not there, if you can just allow for one space to be made free so that everyone can join. And with that, I'll let you go into the tables. Thank you.